Hello guys, this is Coach B with MasterChess.com, and this is the second part of the video, the importance of a rook behind the passed pawn. In this video, I'm going to go over one of the games that was recently played by one of my students in a conference game, and I want to show you the opportunity that he missed, being able to get a winning position, having a passed pawn. So I'm going to go quickly through the moves and stop at the critical moment. So he played the Caro-Kann defense, and I'm just going to fast forward to that point. He played a decent game until that point. And this is the part where in his game from here it went a little bit downhill. Up to this point he has a pretty good position. However, it didn't go well for him as White started putting pressure, and he lost the activity of his bishop, and in the end he also lost the game. However, coming back to this point, I want us to look at this position. After White moved the pawn to a5 here, if you look at this position, you could see that Black has a passed pawn right here, and he can definitely use the rooks to back it up and get an advantage and a winning position here. So here, instead of moving the rook to b8, also blocking this other rook out, a better move for him would have been rook a to c8. Just coming behind this pawn and also getting ready to bring the other rook on the d file to back up this passed pawn would definitely give him a much better position. And then he will be able to use these two pawns against this pawn and definitely get a passed pawn after that and use that to get a winning position. So after this, if White would have moved the knight out, here's a crucial moment. This square right here is a weak square for Black. He doesn't want to let White get the knight on that square, as there's no pawn to chase the knight away, and that knight will be super strong, especially on a dark square, because the bishop cannot attack it, and also the rooks will have a hard time attacking it. Plus the knight from there will be a monster. He's going to be attacking all of these places in Black's camp, and also obviously backwards, but definitely we don't want to let the knight come there. So the best move here for Black is simply to push that pawn, just in case if the knight wants to take the pawn out, the rook can take back. So the rook will defend the pawn, and now pawn to c4. White doesn't want to push the pawn forward, because then it will allow Black to have two passed pawns with the rook behind it. Those passed pawns will be very dangerous. While White on the right side will have 2 versus 1, but also the bishop is there and an extra pawn. White is not going to get much activity doing that. So it's better for White here to actually take this pawn. And after that, Black will take with the bishop, activating it. So now, if you look at White's knight, it doesn't really have any good squares to go anymore. It cannot go here as the pawn attacks that square. It cannot go here as the rook attacks that square. It could retreat, but here White will probably want to trade the knight for the bishop, as this bishop became very active, cutting through White's position. So here a knight to b2 will make sense. And after which, Black probably is better off keeping the bishop, but even if he doesn't, he could bring the rook behind the passed pawn. And after the exchange, now Black has this passed pawn that he could use it for an advantage. So after something like f4, Black can start pushing the pawn. If White barricades that pawn, Black can challenge it. Rook to c1 to defend it. We could trade rooks, and now you could see we got a passed pawn type of position, very similar to what we've looked at. From here, Black needs to make some room for his king to come into game, so pawn to h5 would be a good move. King will come out, Black's king will come out, king to g6. White king coming in, and then Black will be coming with the king to f5. And here, Black is totally winning. After something like a6, Black can try to break White's pawn structure to be able to activate the king even more. Definitely White does not want to allowing White to take this pawn, because then this pawn will also be weak. So maybe king to f3. After take and take, Black can push the pawn to h4, again guarding these two squares with the king and with the pawn, not letting the White king on that side. White will come back. Black now will be able to put pressure on this pawn, and slowly Black is definitely improving his position. After king to d3, there's a couple of ways that Black can play here. Probably the rook to c6 is fine. If white dares to take the pawn, this is definitely not good for him, because after the exchange, black could simply gobble up the other pawns. King to d4 doesn't help. After pushing the pawn once more, white has to retreat. Black takes the other pawn, and this is a totally winning endgame. So let's come back. So after the rook retreat, instead of taking here, if the king goes back to e3, we could just gain an extra tempo with the pawn. King to f3, rook attacking the pawn. King coming back, we have the rook to e4 check. After attacking the pawn, we could start just gobbling up the other pawns. We could take the pawn on f4. After the king takes the pawn on c3, black's king will take the pawn on e5. And now we got two passed pawns in the center. And this game is going to be a very easy winning endgame for black. Slowly improve our position and promote in the end. Alright, thank you for watching this video. Hopefully this gives you also another idea how you could create a pass pawn and use that even starting from the middle game, and then be able to use that position for a winning endgame in the end. Thank you for watching this video, and have a great day.